Okay, I think we're good to go.
Good stuff. Okay, as Chris said, this is the title of this is Data Management, Who Cares? So I'm going to make two assumptions. One is that if you're on this call, then by sort of self-selection, you probably already care about data. So you're already a convert, so I probably don't need to persuade you. However, I'm also going to assume there's people in your organisation that don't particularly care about data or don't get it. So I think sort of the problem to be solved often is how do you get the rest of your business to care? So I suppose that's going to be the point of it. So I'd like to each imagine, I suppose, you've got like a 10-minute slot with your executive team, your senior management, at one of their big meetings. So you turn up for that 10-minute slot and you say, data is really important. We need to focus on data quality. Data is the new oil. It's the lifeblood of the organization. And your senior management team will listen to you and say, oh, that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much. And then as soon as the meeting's finished, they'll completely ignore everything you said and carry on doing what they were doing beforehand. That sort of there's a lot of generic talk about data, and it doesn't go anywhere. And I think the thing we need to bear in mind, I suppose, if you're trying to persuade senior management, is that the senior management of most organisations, they're very good at finance, or they're very good at like running teams of repairs people or housing people, but they don't necessarily know a great deal about data. Now, if you are the main data person at your organisation, you will know more about the opportunities that data can provide in that organisation than the senior management can. So you have a responsibility to try and educate your senior management. Now, I suppose the very basic principle of education, if I went to a primary school and got sort of the youngest group of kids in the primary school and said, maths is really important, you've got to learn your numbers, I wouldn't get very far with it. The way you teach people is via a series of examples. That's how you teach sort of little kids maths. And in the same way, in terms of getting senior management to understand about data, you need to actually go in there with concrete examples. So let's do that 10 minutes again, the 10-minute slot with your executive team, and go in and say something like this. And I have said something like this to my executive team. Hello, executive team. Did you know we've got 17,000 errors, data quality errors in our main system? Here they are on the screen up there. And of those 17,000 errors, we put 25 errors in yesterday. And there they are on the screen here. Now, of the 25 errors that we put in yesterday, this one here means that because we've set the tenancy up so badly, if we take this tenant to court over arrears, we'll lose all the money because the judge will throw this out of court because the tenancy hasn't been set up properly. And this one here, this is a vulnerable tenant, and we put the phone number in wrong. So we can't do safeguarding in this one. And this one down here, this deed title's been set up so badly that we don't understand the repairs liability on this property. So we'll probably go and do repairs on it and lose money because we haven't set up properly. Now, at that point, I can probably just sort of shut up because every single senior management team in the world will react the same way. They'll be a bit, oh, that doesn't sound very good. None of them will say, that's fine, let's carry on like that. They'll all want to do something. They'll have a bit of a chat about it, but the chat will boil down to the chief exec saying to the directors who manage the people that are putting the rubbish in, and you two, go and find out what's going on and go and sort it out. So at the end of that 10-minute slot, what have you got? You've got two directors caring about data. Now, admittedly, only one particular bit of data, but you have got them caring. So, I mean, the way to do it, in my view, I suppose, is you then go back again in a couple of months' time with something else, and something else, and something else. And by giving sort of lots of examples of the opportunities and the problems and the risks around data, you eventually educate your sort of senior management team in the importance of data. And then they start driving their own stuff where you're not aware of problems, so they start coming to you. So that to me, I suppose, is your senior management. So what about your middle management? So by middle management, I mean sort of the people that run sort of significant processes within your organisation. So within a housing association, you might have the person in charge of voids, or the person in charge of the contact centre, or the person in charge of ASB or nominations or rent collection. Doesn't really matter. So that's the middle management. So how do you get them caring? So I'm going to use a real example here. So I'm going to anonymise it because I don't want to embarrass anyone from my company. So I'm going to call the person John, and he's doing process X. Okay. John's a sensible chap. When anybody wanted to know how process X was doing, he had his own spreadsheet. He downloaded data to it from my main system. And when someone said, how's process X going? He'd go, here's process X, look at my spreadsheet. And that was sort of okay. You know, it's better than some, but there's problems with that. I mean, one is it's very sort of person focused. So the data's in a little silo owned by John. and no one else can get at it unless they say to John, can you show me the spreadsheet and tell me what's going on? So that I didn't like about it. The other bit is it's in a spreadsheet and updated by a person. And as we all know, if you're using a spreadsheet to hold data, there is bugs in it, because in every single spreadsheet in the history of the planet, there's always been bugs in every spreadsheet. So I got the spreadsheet off John, found where he was getting the data from, duplicated it in Power BI. I assume you all know sort of Power BI, data visualization tool that you can stick over a data warehouse. Now, in playing with the data relating to Process X, I noticed actually that there was quite an important SLA around Process X that was completely missed off the spreadsheet. And actually, Process X was failing this quite badly. So obviously put that in a nice prominent place on my dashboard, booked a meeting with John and John's boss and said, look, John, here's your spreadsheet, but it's all automated now in the dashboard. Oh, and by the way, look, here's his SLA, and look, and here's us failing it for months on end. Oh, and by the way, sort of John and John's boss, since I think this is important, I put that on a big dashboard that the whole management team and the chief exec can see, sort of this SLA about Process X. So what do you think sort of John's manager is thinking? So John's manager is probably thinking, oh, Christ, I didn't know there was a problem here. I thought everything was okay. And not only has this annoying data guy sort of shown me about this problem with the SLA, but he's also made it sort of visible to like the chief exec and the whole management team. Christ, I better get on that. I better go and actually do things in the real world that make that SLA work better. So I think in practice, we've got John's boss on there in terms of caring about the data, because we've shown her something about what she's in charge of that actually she didn't know beforehand, and she needs to fix because of the visibility aspect. And the same with John. I mean, John might like a spreadsheet, but actually if the chief exec and the management team and his boss are all using the dashboard, he can't help but use it, and the dashboard's going to be more accurate. And because he's not mucking around updating his own spreadsheet, he's got more time to actually drive the process. So I think that's I suppose a way to tackle it with middle management. I mean, I think that there's several different types of middle management. There are people that are a pleasure to work with, who would be who actually understand data and get it and come to you and say, well, I've got this. What can you give me? And then they'll love it and use it and run with it. There are quite a few that are neutral, and there are also quite a few that I suppose I think of them as diehards. The ones that sort of, I've been using this spreadsheet for 10 years, don't need any of that data stuff, don't come near me. And generally, it's not worth trying to sort of persuade sort of the diehard middle managers to move to a more sort of data-focused area, because generally it's a waste of your time, it's too much effort. If you have to, I suppose the only thing I found that's useful is generally if they're that diehard, they're not that good at designing spreadsheets and data. So if you just automate what they're doing and then do reconciliation, you can probably find on a regular basis loads of bugs and problems in what they're doing. And that eventually will persuade them that what they're doing is not the right way of going about it, and they should go down the automated sort of data-driven route. But generally, it's not worth the effort. It's worth putting the effort in with the people who actually sort of want to work with you. Okay, so that's the middle management. What about your team leads? So when I say team leads, I mean people that say manage like 3 or 4 people. Now, one thing about team leads is that you'll often have a number of team leads doing the same sort of job. So let's say you've got a contact center of 60 people, sort of 30 people, or 30 housing officers. You might have sort of 5 or 6 team leads doing the same job. So how do you get them to care? Now, I suppose in my experience, team leads tend to be very competitive. They want to do better than their peers doing the same job, so they can get the promotions and the pay rises. So you build them something data-wise, so they can see how they're doing against their peers. Now, the people who are doing the best against their peers, the sort of in first and second place, they're going to love your dashboard and run with it and say, oh, I love this data, this is great, because they can take that dashboard to their boss and go, look, I deserve a pay rise, look, I'm the best one here. And the person who's doing last won't like the dashboard because it shows them they're not doing very well, but they probably can't help avoiding using it because everybody else is, and that they'll want to sort of justify sort of why they're not doing quite so well. So you can really use competition, I suppose, in sort of the team lead area to get people much more involved, I suppose, in the dashboards. And once they're using your dashboards, they'll come to you more to say, well, can you add this, can you add that? And then far more, you've got that sort of that lovely feedback loop where they look at a dashboard, see something's broken, fix it in the real world, next day dashboard's fine. And that's the sort of thing you're aiming for all the time here, these sort of data-driven processes. the final group is sort of operational people, so the people who actually do the work, the people that actually install the boilers or or deal with the ASB. I generally sort of don't think it's worth trying to persuade them, because if you've got the different levels of management, you've got the senior management, the middle management, the team leads, that will drag everybody else along with it, sort of the operational people. So to me, I think if you're trying to sort of change the culture of a company or get people to care, you get the managers to care. So I'm sort of to draw me to an end of my little talk here. I suppose that I think that there's two sort of themes throughout all my examples, which is one, I suppose, like how important visibility is. So in all of these, wherever you possibly can, you put the data that's showing what's going on in front of as many people as you possibly can. In a sense, what you're trying to do is to sort of share that dirty laundry as wide as you can, because when you do, all the people who own that dirty laundry will try and get it clean. And that's what you want with the data. You want the data to drive real world behavior and to actually drive action. And so the more dirty laundry you share, the more dirty laundry is going to get laundered. The other bit, I suppose, is you have to be reasonably proactive on this stuff. So when in all the examples I've given, no one asked me to do that. It was just what the company needed, which goes back to that sort of the senior data guy in the company needs to drive stuff, needs to be sort of proactive in it, and needs to sort of to try and help educate the entire company. Now, if your senior data guy is sort of sitting around all day, and then someone comes along and says, "Build me a report," and then, "Oh, here's a report," and they go back to sleep again. Well, you're not going to get much value out of your data. You need to have someone in your business that understands data, that is proactively driving change in your business with that data, like some of my examples. So it is worth. I think a lot of companies make the mistake of throwing money at software and not at people. So I think that's the wrong way of going about it. You hire a serious data person, you get much more value out of your data. Okay. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to Chris. That's the end of my bit.
Brilliant. Just stop.